We're joined now by author N.D. Jones to talk a little bit about her journey to writing books and a little bit about what she does and what her works are really about. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when Stanley told me about you wanting to be on the show, I couldn't have been more excited. Just kind of looking over some of what you've done, doing a little bit of reading myself. I mean, I was really excited to get you on here because these are the kind of people that we're always looking to interview, people like yourself. So first off, before we really get into it, why don't you tell people a little bit about what you do and how you came to doing what you do?
Sure. Thank you. I am a USA Today bestselling author of paranormal romance, urban fantasy fiction, and I'll try to keep my origin story, let's call it, fairly short. But many years ago, maybe about 10 years ago, Reginald Hudlin was brought on to write Black Panther, and he really focused on the fact that they were going to marry Black Panther and Storm, which at the time was really unprecedented.
Which are Marvel comic characters, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Most people know Black Panther. I'm sure Marvel is a little more niche for those who don't know.
Okay.
I know because I grew up on the comic
right.
books.
So we're talking about X-Men,
yeah,
Storm from the
exactly.
X-Men. Yeah. But we want to bring her into the Marvel Cinematic Universe with that X-Men acquisition.
Yep.
So fingers crossed for that. But so my husband, I didn't know this. He told me that this is what was going on. So I love anime. I love animation. I love Black love and romance. So I was like, I'm totally there for that. So I just jumped in with reading comics really for that couple because we just don't see Black love just in general media enough, especially in popular media. And I wanted to see what it was all about. And from there, I started writing fan fiction, things that I wanted to see in books that simply weren't there, characters that I loved. And then I finally read an article from an established author about people who wrote fan fiction. And she asked a really simple question. Why spend so much time writing another author's characters when you can write your own? And I'm like, 100% correct. And so that was my segue into self-publishing and creating my own characters and the stories that I wanted to tell.
So, I think there's a ton to unpack there. And what I think is really interesting is that you were telling the stories that you wanted to see.
Exactly.
How big of a motivating force was that for you? Because I know that a lot of people will write to get a paycheck. A lot of people will write because they think it's the only way that I can really sustain myself. But it sounds like a lot of your writing came out of just passion and things that you were passionate about, things you cared about, and things that, more importantly, you just thought were fun, right? I mean, you thought it was fun to read about this and you weren't able to find it anywhere else. So you thought, all right, well, I'll write it and read it myself, and hopefully other people have the same experience. So how motivating was it for you to actually see stories in your mind come onto the page?
You're absolutely right. I listen to audiobooks with paranormal romance and urban fantasy, primarily written by white women. I enjoy those stories, but we know the cultural aspect is missing. So I'm like, I can do that. The passion is there. That's the correct word, but that's my why. And I know that as I write each of my stories, I'm not the only person who wants to see themselves in books. I see it all the time now that I'm in this field with various sister authors, and we tell the same story over and over again. We want to see ourselves equitably and represented well in different forms of media. And what I do is just one way of doing that. So yes, I think ultimately if you write a story that you enjoy, that has value to you and meaning to you, then other people will agree with you. Not all, but if you are happy with what you created, your particular content, then it's all good.
So I know that you're an independent author. My name's Gabe Ortis. We're talking to N.D. Jones right now, independent author. Could you talk about not only some of the struggles that come with being an independent author, but some of the benefits, too, of, in a lot of ways, being your own boss, getting to dictate what your content is, and not really having to jump through too many hoops to get your work out there. So what struggles have you come across being an independent author, but also what benefits have you found that authors who are signed down to contracts might not be able to experience?
Absolutely. I think you already hit on major ones. When you are an indie author, you have 100% control over every aspect of that business, from the writing to the distribution to the marketing. And with that, some of the challenges can come as well. But let me say this. If anyone's out there and they are considering independent publishing, they need to think about the skills and knowledge that they bring to the situation. Be willing to outsource what they do not know well, because in the end, you want that high quality. And understand that you have to be a person who's extremely independent and been able to push yourself along, because your deadline is your deadline. There isn't this external person telling you that deadline is created. So you have to have that initiative. And the struggle is, of course, that you don't necessarily have that system to surround you. And I would say for me, especially with me being an introvert, marketing, I find, is a skill that I am constantly learning, constantly trying to perfect. And what I also find is that sometimes it's difficult to find that niche, because as much as I want to write, and I do write about Black characters, African characters, it is not the mainstream. So I'm always struggling to find those readers.
Absolutely. So without spoiling too much,
Sure.
let's get into a little bit of what your work is about. If you just had to pick one series or one book, just give us an explanation of kind of what the story is, a little insight into the characters that we'd be reading about, and more importantly, where we can find your books if people are interested in reading them.
Absolutely. My most recent series is actually a duology. It's entitled Feline Nation. And the first story is A Queen's Pride. And really, I take a look at colonialism, manifest destiny, expansionism, all of that in the realm of shifters. And so with A Queen's Pride, you take a young lady on the cusp of maturity, and what happens when she runs into a government agency who wants to infringe on her land. And we know what happens. It's always violence ensues. And then in Moth That Claws, the book that follows, I actually go back in time and take a look at, if you think about the Native population of this country and how they were systematically pushed off their land and where they are now. So again, I took something that was very true in history, not just for this country, but in many countries around the world, and put that fantastical paranormal lens on it. But people, when they read that and they understand history, they understand exactly the story that I was telling. And all of it is really just based on history, but again, just told that way. My books can be found in most online booksellers, Amazon, of course, Barnes & Nobles, Books A Million, Walmart, at IndieBound. And I want to give a plug out to Legacy Book Bar owner, Manita Bill Bush. She is the owner of a local book selling company, and she sells my books, and I appreciate that partnership, keeping it local and keeping it Black and women.
That's awesome. Again, my name is Gabe Ortis. We're talking here with N.D. Jones, independent author of paranormal romance and urban fiction novels. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I really can't wait to get it out on the air, because I know people are going to absolutely eat this up. And I can't encourage them more than you already have to go out and read these books, because not only are they fun fictional stories, but they also tell so much about our own society and where we are in terms of our morals, in terms of how civilization has developed. A lot of your books really have it all, especially for people in our audience. So I think they're really going to enjoy it. And thank you so much for stopping by and giving us some time today.
And thank you. I appreciate your time and the opportunity as well.
Absolutely. You're welcome here. Anytime you'd like to come on, just be sure to shoot me a text message and we can get it together, because this has been awesome. Thank you. N.D. Jones, everybody, independent author. Grab her books. Queen's Pride is her most recent book. Anywhere you get your books, Amazon and any other online bookstore right now. Thank you so much.